Vanessa Tester prepares to pay her monthly BVU bill.
They ain't done nothing to me.
She's convinced every penny she pays BVU is used in the public's best interest.
I think people been treated fair here.
This is a public utility, contrary to some people's opinion and how they run it.
BVU board member Doug Fleener says the utility has its customers fooled.
I would almost be willing to bet you they'll be as offended, as upset as I was.
The local attorney says he felt obligated last year to alert authorities about possible criminal activity at BVU after viewing pages upon pages of BVU credit card expenses from an 18-month period in 2012 and 2013.
If people don't put a stop to it, then it can, the graft, the abuse, and I believe this is abuse, continues.
So what kind of abuse?
There is one employee particularly that had numerous Starbucks charges.
Fleener says BVU employees without board approval had no problem satisfying their personal needs on the customer's dime.
Starbucks, Chick-fil-A. To me, it's ludicrous and outrageous.
But that's not all. He's quick to list off several high-dollar meals for employees. From Outback Steakhouse.
There was a bill for Outback for $3,500 that supposedly was for a safety. They had exceeded their safety standards.
To hundreds of dollars spent at the Troutdale.
I can't afford to go to Troutdale. I guarantee you the ratepayers and so forth in the city of Bristol can't afford, most of them can't afford to go to Troutdale.
He also mentions a pizza party last year, following the surprising resignation of BVU's longtime CEO.
They called in Pizza Plus order for all the employees to celebrate him being gone.
Several hundred man-hours have been invested into this case. Primarily for the last 6 months, my time has been devoted to this case.
Senior Detective James Blevins calls the BVU investigation the most consuming financial investigation of his 16-year career.
Currently, it's still ongoing.
Blevins tells us its scope is broad.
It involves multiple people within the organization and the organization itself.
Among the things under investigation, several months' worth of credit card expenses, now secured in boxes.
What is questionable is what activities took place on those credit card accounts.
Fleener believes the investigation will uncover plenty more questions.
It's unfair, and someone needs to stop it.
I would have to see it to believe it, because they've been great with me.
For now, Tester stands behind BVU, but she says that could change depending what detectives discover. Bristol, Virginia, a good place to live, a good place to eat.
And the pastries to the coffee.
Particularly this little downtown gem.
Really like the brownie towers, you know, them are delicious.
Alex Link stops by Blackbird Bakery whenever he gets the chance.
When I have the money.
Which is not as often as he'd like. If he worked for Bristol Virginia Utilities, though, it might be a different story. The public utility that will soon power his new apartment spent nearly $1,000 in an 18-month period here. The result of 5 employees swiping their BVU credit cards a combined 26 times.
I mean, that's not right. I mean, you're taking your customers' money.
And that's just the beginning. In light of ongoing questions about BVU's past spending, we requested all of the utilities' credit card expenses from April 2012 to September 2013. But BVU's attorney denied our public records request. But that didn't stop us. We've since obtained the documents and confirmed with multiple sources they are legitimate. Then we did some simple math. We found 42 charges totaling more than $6,200 at Logan's, 130 charges adding up to more than $5,500 spent at Chick-fil-A, 53 charges equaling almost $4,500 at Cracker Barrel, 15 charges totaling more than $2,200 at Salsaritas, and a $743 bill at Martin's KP Duty for a called board meeting. And those are just a sample. Practically every restaurant at Exit 7 in Bristol received a visit from a BVU credit card holder. Among the people making multiple credit card charges for food, a BVU employee who spent almost $800 over 26 visits at 2 different Mexican restaurants. Another person who wasn't afraid to swipe her BVU credit card multiple times? The utility's chief financial officer, a woman who today collects an annual salary of more than $193,000. Despite that paycheck, she made 5 visits to Starbucks, roughly $30, 32 separate trips to Chick-fil-A, costing customers just under $300. And BVU customers also paid for a $12 trip to Sweet Frog.
The things you're talking about haven't occurred in 5-6 months. We're going forward.
Since Michael Bundy took over as interim president and CEO of BVU, he says he's made major changes to control credit card spending.
I need to be looking at every single expense, and that previously wasn't happening.
One of the changes, all expenses now go through him.
I'll be the first to admit that our discretionary spending needed reined in, and I'm proud to say it has been reined in, and we've continued that trend for 5 months.
Bundy stopped short of calling any of the charges we mentioned questionable. Still, he says the system needed to be changed, and now he says BVU is saving ratepayers tens of thousands of dollars on credit card purchases.
Do you feel like you owe them an apology for the past, though?
I think I owe them making us as efficient and effective as I can. I think I owe keeping the lights on, the water running, and the bandwidth flowing at the lowest cost possible, and that's the trajectory that we're on.
Bundy says since he's been at the helm, there have been no more trips to Blackbird Bakery and no more personal food spending by any cardholders.
Driving downtown and getting a Starbucks on a BVU credit card, just not going to happen.
Anymore?
No. As far as an individual employee going somewhere and having lunch by themselves and just deciding it's going to be on BVU, not going to happen.
And that happened quite a bit before.
I can only speak to my tenure and going forward.
I think that there's an economic depression potentially in Exit 7 area with the loss of the revenue from Bristol Virginia Utilities.
Doug Fleener continues to be the only BVU board member who's shared his concerns publicly. He's the one who tipped off authorities to possible criminal activity at BVU. And today,
I've been told up there that it's just bad judgment.
despite what he's heard from the people in charge of BVU, the criminal defense attorney stands by that decision.
I have tried that defense in front of judges for 20 years. I've argued it to juries before when I didn't have anything else. And guess what? My people get convicted.
Senior Detective James Blevins calls the BVU investigation the most consuming financial investigation of his 16-year career. He says it's one that requires lengthy research and one he's not taking lightly.
We're doing everything we can from the standpoint of conducting this investigation thoroughly and fairly to get everything done as quickly as we can.
The city of Bristol at one point may have had its doubts. The city sent the Commonwealth Attorney this letter in December, which includes a reminder to avoid an unnecessarily lengthy investigation. 2 months later, the Commonwealth Attorney fired back, saying, "The sheriff and I did not create the BVU situation." But that's not all. She said any unnecessary delay can be linked directly to BVU management. Nicole Price wrote, "Despite being instructed by their board to fully cooperate with law enforcement, they do not. We continue to encounter refusals, delays, and other tactics from the current management team of BVU, which slow down the investigation. It is hard to believe that these highly paid employees who have deliberately and blatantly disobeyed their board's directive are still in charge of day-to-day operations at BVU. I can provide concrete examples of management's continued efforts to thwart and stall this investigation."
I don't know where that came from. As soon as I read the letter, I reached out and said, what is it that we can do better?
BVU's top manager says since, he's made it a point to check in with a detective every Monday. Still, he believes all BVU employees, himself included, have been cooperative.
I don't know of any member of this staff that has not been, and if I was aware of that, I would fix it.
398.
Samuel Williams is fed up. Almost a third of his monthly income already goes to BVU. Imagine his surprise when we told him some of his past payments didn't stay in Bristol, Virginia.
It ain't right for them to do this.
BVU says it's given thousands of dollars to schools, public and private, in Washington County and Bristol, Virginia in recent years. The utility also documents countless other ways it's offered support to those schools. But then there's this: several years worth of sizable donations to Tri-Cities Christian Schools, a private school in Blountville, Tennessee, more than 20 miles away from BVU headquarters. Over a 4-year period, $9,000 went to that private school in Blountville, Tennessee.
Well, that ain't right.
Even more surprising, BVU's former president and CEO, Wes Rosenbaum, who resigned last year, sat on the school board, and his wife was the school's chief financial officer. And that's not all.
I don't know how many of his children went there, but I understand that some or all of them did.
You can understand why that's going to raise some questions.
We absolutely understand that, and that's why it stopped.
BVU board chairwoman Faith Esposito says those questionable donations are now a thing of the past.
Were the board involved with these charitable donations?
We were not.
Donations, she says, never even got board approval.
We have reviewed and stopped a lot of things, that being one of them.
Esposito says the decision to stop those donations was part of BVU's continued efforts to regain the public's trust.
We're committed to making this place something the community can be very proud of.
Ask Samuel Williams,
Surely not.
and he'll tell you the utility still has a long way to go.